Welcome everybody to Go Local Live. I'm Josh Fenton, CEO and co-founder. We are heading right down to the University of Virginia. We've got Professor Jennifer Lawless. She is the chair of the Political Science Department. We have politics virtually everywhere, and we're going to jump right into it with the professor on a Wall Street Journal article yesterday that raised real questions about President Biden's age and his ability to perform his duties. It's a tough article. Obviously, Republicans are very critical of him. Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy and sitting Speaker Mike Johnson both poked holes at the president, but also unnamed Democrats also raised issues. Talk a little bit about the president, his ability to govern, and his age.
Look, this is not a surprise. From the minute Joe Biden announced that he was running in 2020, his age became an issue, and it's even more prevalent right now. Democrats and Republicans alike are concerned that he's too old. They wish that he was younger. They wish in a lot of ways that the overall ticket was younger. But this is who they've got, and the question now becomes whether he has the cognitive ability and the infrastructure and experts around him to allow him to govern for a second term. And there's very little evidence to suggest that the answer to that question is no. So although there are certainly examples of senior moments and there are concerns about sort of his agility and his ability to articulate the same way that he used to, at the end of the day, Democrats generally coalesce behind the premise that they trust him and they're going to support him. The one other thing I would note is that as the debate, as the campaign heats up, after we see the debate on June 27th, and then certainly heading throughout the summer, my bet is that if not the Biden campaign itself, certainly super PACs or Biden surrogates are going to start suggesting that Donald Trump succumbs to the same kinds of senior moments, the same kinds of cognitive missteps that anybody that's in their late 70s or early 80s would. Now, that's not great for democracy, and that the American people are basically given a choice between two octogenarians, but it might level the playing field a little bit more.
I was going to bring up the fact that Donald Trump seems to be increasing the number of verbal missteps that he has as well. Today's the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Most of the veterans who participated in arguably one of America's most important demonstration of fighting for democracy, they're all about 100 years old. Might we be better served by having two from the greatest generation competing rather than just two middle of the road 80-year-olds?
I think there is no question that people are upset that this is what we've got. But the thing that I always come back to is this is what the people chose. Certainly on the Republican side, there were voters who had a plethora of options this time around to choose many candidates, all of whom were significantly younger than Donald Trump. In 2020, the Democrats faced the same decision point, and almost everybody, with the exception of Bernie Sanders on that stage, was a generation younger than Joe Biden. And these were the people that the voters selected. So all of the booing and moaning regarding the age, to me, is a whole lot of nothing, given that these people made it through their primaries.
Let's head to Delaware. There's a court case going on there. Hunter Biden is facing multiple federal charges related to lying on the purchasing of a gun. He said he was not an addict at the time. He was an addict. I believe he's also facing some tax charges. Here we are, another sort of very significant courtroom drama. This one is, to call it tawdry is a great understatement. How does this case play out legally, but much more importantly, probably in the grander scheme of the country, how does it play out politically?
To speak to the political side of it first, I actually think that it's good news for Democrats who can refute claims on the Republican side about what they view as this two-tiered system of justice that's targeting Republicans and Donald Trump. If there was a two-tiered system of justice where the Democrats were basically conspiring to lock Donald Trump up and let Democrats off the hook, we wouldn't see Hunter Biden on trial and potentially facing jail time. Similarly, we wouldn't see Bob Menendez on trial. We wouldn't see a lot of Democrats on trial who are and who have been prosecuted by the current Justice Department. So just more broadly, I think the fact that the trial is taking place undermines some of the Republicans' arguments. The other reason that I think it undermines the Republicans' arguments and can help Democrats politically is that survey data indicate that almost every American knows somebody who's been touched by addiction, and everybody has very strong views about whether we should be rehabilitating people who have dealt with addiction or punishing them. And so there's an empathy factor here that's more in line with Hunter Biden than it is with the prosecutors who are trying to take him down. You did mention the tawdry aspects of that, though, and that's certainly a mitigating factor. Hunter Biden's ex-wife, Beau Biden's widow, Hunter Biden's girlfriend are all going to be testifying to sort of speak to what his state of mind was and what his condition was. But there's no question that every story that is mentioned about this is going to highlight the fact that he actually had a relationship with Beau Biden's widow, which I think rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
Yeah, that should be jailable in and of itself. But all that aside, would the best thing be that Hunter Biden, for Joe Biden's reelection purposes, would the single best thing be that Hunter Biden gets convicted and spends 90 or 180 days in a federal penitentiary?
I don't like to put people in jail for political purposes. I don't like to wish that upon them. I do think that if there's a conviction, it allows the Democrats. I don't think Joe Biden will view this particularly positively anyway, because it's his son, but I do think it allows the Democrats to make a stronger case. I will say that, the sentencing and the reaction to the sentencing in this case, if he's convicted, I think will have a lot to do with what happens on July 11th when we find out Donald Trump's sentence.
Okay, so the big event, let's put both these into some perspective, really is coming up in June 27th, where Donald Trump and Joe Biden, who have been firing shots at one another for the better part of 4 years, will meet up again and debate each other. It will be a little bit of rule changes, in which an important rule change for the benefit of Joe Biden, a very difficult rule change for Donald Trump, who's been sort of the king of interruption in previous presidential debates, that the moderators will be able to cut off Donald Trump's mic if they feel that he is inappropriately interfering with a response from Joe Biden. How big an event is this debate? Is this one of the big ones? And if Joe Biden trips and stumbles, is he in big trouble?
First, in terms of the microphone rule change, it's important to keep in mind that the rule change just allows the moderator the opportunity to do that. It's not to say that the moderators will actually do it. And there are going to be strong incentives not to do it, because they don't want to give the Republicans or the Democrats, depending on what happens, any ammunition to suggest that bias on the part of the network caused the outcome that was caused. And so I think we might get less microphone turning off than the rules may permit. It's high stakes, but it's also 3 months before people really start, 2.5 months before people really start paying attention to what's going on, which I think is part of the reason that both candidates agreed to this date. If either makes a major mistake, there's still enough time to recover. A debate post Labor Day doesn't allow that kind of advantage. So in some ways, I think of it a little bit as like spring training, and we'll see what happens.
Could they have pushed it to July 4th that evening and had hot dogs and fireworks?
Fireworks.
Let's go to the Middle East. The Biden administration is pushing Israel and Hamas to agree upon a ceasefire. The national discussion about what's going on in Gaza right now is almost invisible, because there's no protest on college campuses, which seem to have sparked the press. They love the photos and the camaraderie between protesters and counter-protesters, or law enforcement and protesters. With all that gone, is this just dripping down lower, lower, lower into a non-issue?
I don't think it's becoming a non-issue. There will be a couple of big times that protesters will have an opportunity, I think, to really garner quite a bit of attention. So both the Republican and the Democratic conventions over the summer, are prime opportunities. And if we're exactly where we are when school resumes in the late summer and early fall, and there's an election season right around the corner, an election right around the corner, I think that we're going to even see more on college campuses. This opportunity for the next several weeks or months is one for the Biden administration to see if they can negotiate or continue to work to negotiate some degree of a ceasefire, because I think heightened campus activity will be what we see in September if they don't.
Okay, let's go down to the border. President Biden dramatically changed his immigration policy, which seemed to spark Republican response of too little, too late, and Democrats to say, "What, are you crazy?" We got bombarded by Democratic members of Congress who blasted, Ed Markey blasted the president's policy change. Talk about, is that the perfect solution for Joe Biden, piss off everyone, or is there a method to the madness?
The method to the madness is that the campaign looked at the polls and realized that immigration is one of the top issues on the minds of American voters, and Donald Trump has an almost 30 percentage point advantage on that issue. So this is not surprising. It's not surprising that the Biden administration is basically implementing what the Trump policy would have been either. It's hard to see. I think the calculus that they're making is Democrats have nowhere else to go, and independents might find this somewhat, if not appealing, then at least an opportunity to solve a problem. The other thing that I do think the Biden administration has going for it is that they tried to work out a bill with Congress. There was bipartisan support, and at the end of the day, Donald Trump is the one who said, we don't want to give the Democrats a victory. We don't want to give Joe Biden a victory. So even though this bill basically gets us everything we want, you guys need to vote against it. And so what Joe Biden is doing is, the extent to which he can, implementing that bill through an executive order.
I agree with you 100% that there was a very, very strongest piece of legislation that's probably been proposed in 10 years that did have bipartisan support. That Donald Trump undermined it. But why take 3 months off in between the failure of that bill to pass and then implement a policy through executive orders?
I don't know. I do think there have been things going on, like, the conflict in the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine war and Donald Trump's trial and,
Hunter Biden's trial.
Hunter Biden's trial, continued restrictions
really
on abortion access, Samuel Alito flying a flag upside down. I mean, like, there's a lot on the list. I don't think that 3 months in the broad scheme of politics is that long.
Did Joe Biden have something
I do think, though, to be a little cynical, the recent polling data probably served as that final push.
Yeah. I think he has 4% approval rating on his immigration policy, or somewhere around there, plus or minus. Can you go below zero? If you have 4% approval rating and the poll is plus or minus 5, could you actually be -1?
I'm not answering such a question.
Well, let's jump over to Congress. Anything going on in Congress? Will Congress do a single thing before they adjourn for the election?
No. And I think at this point, what we really need to watch is the extent to which the Republicans are willing to potentially implode. So in Virginia's 5th congressional district, where Charlottesville is, for example, yesterday there was our primaries in 2 weeks. And Bob Good, who is one of the members of Congress who has voted with the Matt Gaetz contingent, the Marjorie Taylor Greene contingent, to take out Kevin McCarthy, ultimately to make Mike Johnson's life difficult, is being challenged by a Trump supporter. And Marjorie Taylor Greene was here in town rallying. It's kind of unheard of for members of Congress, or at least until about 10 years ago, it was unheard of for members of Congress to campaign against sitting incumbents. Now they are. And what the Republicans have demonstrated is that they also hold grudges. So, I'm kind of looking at what the campaign activity will be for a lot of these members, especially those who are in safe districts who don't have to worry about their own races. But that's what they're going to be doing for the next 4 months. They're not going to be legislating.
And Trump didn't have a very good day Tuesday in New Jersey, according to reports.
In what way?
that some of his candidates did not perform
because the New Jersey election.
Yeah.
Yeah. Trump has not, so, Donald Trump has significantly overstated the importance of a Trump endorsement. If you look
Yeah.
over time, a lot of his candidates in primaries do not make it through to the general election. He also has a habit of switching support. And then when people he didn't endorse in the primary do make it to the general election, he gets on board and suggests that these were his candidates all along. So systematically, what happened in New Jersey on Tuesday is not that different than what he's experienced over the course of the last 6 or 7 years. It's just not how he frames results.
Okay, last question. Which is a bigger night? Debate night on June 27th, or I believe sentencing day on July 11th? Which has more magnitude?
Oh, no question, July 11th. First of all, people don't watch debates. So what the debates allow for are sound bites and ads and gotcha moments that can then go viral or that can be part of a 25 or 30-second news clip. The American people will be watching the sentencing.
Actually, I lied. That wasn't the last. Was the best moment in recent weeks the 6-year-old son of a Republican member of Congress making faces behind him on the floor of the House? It obviously brought up an important historical moment when when Mayor Giuliani was being sworn in and his son Andrew mimic the entire speech during the inauguration, and then Chris Farley really memorialized it in a famous episode of Saturday Night Live. How good was that?
It was excellent. It was a feel-good moment, but the thing that was sort of great about it too was when you listen to the content of the congressman talking about how Trump has been, raked over the coals and this is not fair. In some ways, it looks like his son is actually mocking the content of what he's saying. And so, I think Democrats appreciated it. I think Republicans sort of thought it was cute. Oh, this is, a bring your kid to work day on the floor. But it definitely, I think, made everybody sort of take a little bit of a lighter path for a bit.
Did Joe Biden bring Hunter to work that day?
I'm not engaging.
As always, thank you so much. Always appreciate Chair of the Political Science Department at the University of Virginia, Jennifer Lawless. Everybody else, stay tuned. A lot going on, a little murky outside, but that is not stopping the politics and the news of the day. Stay tuned for many updates, including what's going on the investigation of the overnight shooting that left 1 dead and 1 hospitalized. We'll have much, much more throughout the day and into the evening. Celtics play tonight at 8:30 in Game 1. If you want to see that preview piece breaking it down, Kevin Stakem of GoLocal, a former NBA ring winner with the Boston Celtics and a former longtime scout for the Dallas Mavericks, has a great breakdown on that. You can see it on the sports page. Thanks, everybody.